You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone, to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm your host, Carlos Noche. In today's topic, we're going to talk about emotional fitness. You know, when we think about emotional fitness, how does it relate to our performance under pressure and our long-term resilience in sales? And to help us out with that, we have Ben Drakes, founder and self-titled Ben Drakes University, a consultancy that's really focused on driving peak sales performance. Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on the podcast, Carlos. Really appreciate the invite.
Excellent. So Ben, our little warm-up question of the day, what's something that you are passionate about that those that primarily only know you through business might be surprised to know about you?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, great question. And I have to say, I know a lot of I've listened to some of the podcast episodes. I know a lot of people talk about their kids, but it's my twins. I have twins. It's their 15th birthday today. So how can that not be something that I mention? But also, obviously, I love them dearly. And but when my son was born, he was very ill. So he was born with a congenital heart defect.
Oh, no.
And he was very, very seriously ill. And the wonderful people at Great Ormond Street Hospital over here in London, well, they saved his life. He had his entire heart reconstructed at the age of 9 months old. And that just led me on a journey. At the time, I was running big ticket outsourcing deals, working for one of the big outsourcers here in the UK. And I came out of big ticket outsourcing literally into probably the first properly traumatic situation I'd had to deal with. And that I went back into the sales world for another 4 years. But I don't know, you may know, your listeners may know, when you go through something like that, something shifts inside of you. And I kind of wanted to do something to give back a little bit. But yeah, so shout out to my twins, 15 today.
That's awesome. I don't have any kids. My joke has always been I've never been home long enough to make any. Although they tell me it doesn't take long. But one of my other thoughts was, hey, if you're going to have kids, you might as well have twins. That way you get two of them out at the same time. But someone said,
get them done.
It's twice the effort, twice the work. It's not easy.
There's no sleeping for the first 18 months. Like, there was never a time both kids are asleep at the same time for 18 months. Obviously, we were in and out of hospitals. That went on for months and months and months. So look, latterly, my son, they repaired his heart. He's, touch wood, he's absolutely fine. But he does have special needs. And so I'm a carer for a young person with special needs as well. And I didn't know if life was going to work out that way for me, but they're brilliant kids. And I love them dearly. And I've learned so much on this journey. And it really is what brings me into this role and us together today, really.
And you brought up a great point. A dramatic situation like that, especially one that's totally out of your control, can really have an impact on you and really make you rethink life a little bit. Now, as he gets older, does his heart get stronger and develop more?
Yeah, he's had multiple stenting operations to kind of dilate the, around the heart, those areas. So yeah, but now, again, touch wood, he's been signed off by Great Ormond Street, and he's, it was miraculous what they did. And he's super, super strong. He loves life. He's got a great sense of humor. And he enjoys his life. So yeah, he's doing great.
All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know this was part of your journey, but what was your journey to success as a successful sales professional, and then later on as a professional consultant around sales?
Carlos, I came out of my education not with a great deal of success. Academically, it just wasn't for me. Is there something going on with my brain? Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, I left school and I got a job, and I thank sales as a profession that it was something I was able to go into. I'm talking late 90s now. I joined a technology company based in London, and I didn't start out as being even knowing what sales was particularly, but it was a home that I found, and I was quite good at relationship building and the non-academic side of life. And it was the first time I was able to be successful at something outside of the school environment where I hadn't done very well. And one thing led to another, and 5 years later, I got the top seller spot at that technology company out of 400 salespeople. And you never do that stuff on your own, right? It's a team effort. And then I moved from technology, I moved into outsourcing. So I worked for two very large outsourcing companies based over here in the UK. And I just saw a whole different side of sales, which was now focused much more on delivering business outcomes for customers and different commercial models, dealing with people kind of higher up the org chart in terms of the customer, and talking strategy rather than technology. And it really, I spent over 10 years in outsourcing, and I just learned so much. So sales has been really, really good for me. I've worked across government, private sector, multiple service outsourcing deals. So that's what I've done throughout my entire career. And it's an absolute privilege to do what I do now, which is I work with sales teams to help them pivot to wherever their company's going strategically, and execute that early sales stage process. So I don't get, most of my customers have one of the big kind of sales methodologies that's going on in house. I leave them to that. I don't want to get involved in that. They're all good. But I help them with that early sales stage, which is how do we get through the door with different customers, humans, we call them stakeholders, but they're humans, and tell a different story, change perception about us, and make that strategic pivot. So that's what I do today, Carlos. So I'm privileged to work with customers here in the UK and really across the world. So yeah, and that's how I got to know your country. It was many trips to the USA working with teams based there.
All right. So today's topic is about emotional fitness. Ben, in your words, I mean, what does that mean? Because sometimes, we all get a picture in our head of what we're talking about. So I'll have you define it, and then we can dive into different aspects of it.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. So emotional fitness for me as a sales professional is really that I don't have to be kind of yanked around by my emotions at any particular time. I can have control over my emotions, and I can control my emotional state before I go into high pressure situations. And I can regulate my emotional state when I'm outside of work and have a happier, more content existence, and also which supports our wellness as well as we go through this quite stressful, high intensity, high pressured career, which is what a life in sales is. And you can have lots of ups and downs, and a lot of things that you're not in control of. And so that means we have to have a strategy and a process to be able to manage our emotional state at any particular time. And I felt as a sales professional, I've been on lots of wonderful sales training courses in my career. And I always felt that, okay, so you're giving me new methodology, you're giving me new strategy and tactics, all of them involve me probably getting outside of my comfort zone. Where's my strategy and tactics to be able to execute that in a way that's calm and measured and doesn't take such a toll on me afterwards? And so I saw people using kind of things like methodologies like challenger sale, which I love, by the way, but take a look at challenger sale, and just by its very nature, it means going and talking to the customer differently and bringing all those insights and data points.
It can
And
be combative.
when I first
challenging someone that's sometimes senior to you.
Yeah, more senior, so you get that feeling of imposter syndrome. And I had that when I was a new starter in sales because I was always the youngest in the room with the customer, and I just felt that what was missing from the sales training world was a focus on how do we prepare for and manage high pressure situations, and how do we sleep better and manage our emotional state better.
I like that. All right. So sales by its nature, as you stated, is kind of a high pressure job. On one hand, it's I loved it because hey, you're going to measure me not on doing it exactly the way you do it, but on the result at the end of the day. And that's part of the good part about it. The bad part about it, it's kind of black and white. If you can't get the result at the end of the day, which really drives a lot of salespeople, then hey, you're not doing your job, and now comes even more pressure to do your job or to go find another place to go do it. How can salespeople build that emotional fitness muscle? Or, do you have some suggestions so that I can get more in shape emotionally or mindset wise, trying to evolve and change over time?
Yeah, sure. And look, I thrive under pressure. I'm sure you do. I'm competitive, and but I also recognize that what's my performance like under pressure is down to how I show up for a high pressure meeting, for example. And so, what I train people, salespeople, to be able to tap into is two things, Carlos. You have something called top down control of your emotional state. And top down control would be having a deliberate mindset or a deliberate story that you tell yourself. And so when we're thinking about mindset in sales, we are focused on achieving an outcome that has no guarantee. So we almost need to visualize that we can us achieving that outcome and have an inner self-talk that's positive, often in the face of adversity or things that have gone wrong outside of our control, or probably mistakes that we've made ourselves right along the sales cycle. So that's top-down control, and I'll double click on that a little more shortly. So this top-down control is a story I tell myself. I also have the ability to use bottom-up control. That's using my body in a certain way to send the right messages back to my limbic brain, my emotional brain, that everything is going okay, even when I'm in a high pressure situation. And so I started employing these strategies and techniques, and I realized that there was just this phenomenal win win, which was the very top down and bottom up control techniques that I can use in high pressure situations. If I kind of use those outside of high pressure situations, they're kind of the very things that I need to do to stay emotionally fit outside of work. So that's what I wanted to share with your listeners today, Carlos. And then it's like, no, we don't have to be a passenger. Even when the sea gets a bit choppy, we can stay sailing our boat, kind of on an even keel emotionally. And that's what I want for people. And that's where I think if you have a sales team as an executive listening to this podcast, and you've given them the strategy and tactics around your chosen sales methodology, let's have them be able to tap into their highest level of performance, but also stay content and happy outside of work.
So let's dive into these a little bit. I like the way you talked about how we show up, because maybe it's just the times that we're in, but I feel like versus, my generation growing up where we didn't talk a lot about emotion and feelings, you kept that stuff to yourself. Today, hey, and I think it's good. We're much more willing to talk about our emotion and feelings. We're much more willing to talk about our own, disabilities or setbacks, if you will, whatever you want to call them, and actually deal with them, right? To be open and honest about it and deal with it, and but still be effective at the end of the day. So the reason I bring it up, because you're right. You introduce a sales framework, for example, and the first thing people have to get through is, hey, you got to get through that discomfort of using it, so you have the confidence of using it in front of a customer. What tips do you have to maybe kind of help deal with that journey? And whatever the process is, whether it's the value selling that we present or Challenger or any others that are out there, how do I get through that journey of, what tips might you have? And I got some ideas too of starting to get comfortable in elevating your game.
Yeah, so I think it's good to have a process. So we always need to fall back on process as professionals, right? It's what differentiates an amateur to a professional. In exactly the same way, a sports star, so if they go to take a penalty in the soccer World Cup final, then they have a process for dealing with that situation. And in sports, they call that a pre-performance routine. So, what I've introduced is a pre pressure routine that all salespeople can adopt today to have themselves arrive in as calm a state as possible for them on any high pressure situation. What that protocol is it's called the 6 second relax, Carlos. And it was developed by a group of cardiologists in the USA to help people who come out of hospital after their cardiac operations and they, day-to-day stressful situations were kind of the biggest threat to their health, right? And so, but we can use it in sales, and then I kind of expand on that. But I can give everybody this strategy now, which is before you go into the stressful situation, whatever it might be, a Teams call, a customer meeting face to face. Lots of people report internal meetings being more stressful for them. It's your time to speak on the internal all hands. And what you do is you employ both bottom up control and top down control in 6 seconds. So you inhale gently through your nose and you say to yourself, mind alert. You exhale vigorously as you like. You exhale for 3 seconds and you say to yourself, body calm. Whilst you're doing that, you ensure you hold your peripheral vision open because when we get put under pressure, although we don't necessarily notice it, we start losing our peripheral vision, and I'll break down why that is after this. But we also smile a little bit. You've got 88 muscles in your face, and they're all controlled by a part of your nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. And this strategy is designed to use breath work, talking to myself, so bottom up control, top down control, and now bringing in my facial muscles and deliberately using my eyes to send back the message to my anxious mind that everything is okay. And most people don't realize that that's a two-way street. Okay, I'm starting to feel nervous. Right, now I can deploy this 6 second relax protocol just to quickly slow my heart rate down, reduce my blood pressure, reduce the amount of cortisol my body's producing, take my adrenaline down, take my norepinephrine down, which is kind of like adrenaline in your brain. And so I can think more clearly. And then, hey, repeat the 6 second relax as many times as you need to. But that would be my fastest way of just trying to explain it, but also give people a protocol that they can use right now to just down regulate their emotional state.
I love that. In fact, I'll give that a try. A buddy of mine I call him a buddy now, and I met him on this podcast, Steve Hart. He's out of the UK as well. He had a post yesterday about scuba diving and that, the fact that it's kind of a dangerous sport and then the things that you do to be better prepared when you're under stress. So you practice as part of your getting certified. Hey, if I'm 30, 40, 50 feet down and my mask comes off, hey, don't overreact. Don't just, start gasping for air and going up. Hey, clear out your mask. This is what you do, and you practice it. Why do I bring that up? Because I think it's the same when we think about these high stress situations that we put ourselves in sales a lot of times. Sometimes it's self-imposed, right? We got a target, I'm falling behind. So we put some of that on ourselves. And I think one of the things that you need to do to be better prepared is, hey, are you spending time in preparing? So when you think about emotional fitness, is being better prepared for the sales conversation, thinking about what you know and don't know, and thinking through your questions and who's going to be there and doing some research about it. Does that help you be better prepared for this I don't want to call it a battle, but this interaction that you're having that you might even put you in this high stress mode.
Yeah, look, hey, we've all been there, arriving on a call unprepared. It's horrible, and nothing gets you out of that preparation, does it? But in sales, when we're dealing with human to human interaction, what the type of preparation you do, of course, you should know about their business. Of course, you should know about what their kind of KPIs are and all of these all the business stuff. Of course, you should know that, and you should know your own product and your own service and the value that you can bring. But also, you should be researching the other person, right? I mean, I run a program called Prospecting with Empathy that is all about practicing empathy. And what we're doing in doing that is we need to recognize that other people are measuring and assessing us first in terms of us as humans, and their emotional brain is doing that kind of subconsciously for them. Again, it's the limbic system. It's the one of the most ancient parts of the human brain. Is assessing the customers assessing us emotionally. And Carlos, there's something called emotional contagion, which is a theory in psychology, but I think it's true, which is if I practice empathy with you, you're more likely to mirror that back to me and want to help me if I kind of get something wrong, or if I'm kind of going off track in a sales conversation. We always need our customers sometimes to bring us back online, don't we? Or back to the point. And so practicing and leading with empathy, both in prospecting, but also when we're in meetings with customers, is critical. And how can we do that if we're not prepared? It's one of the reasons we were chatting away on LinkedIn last night, for example, because I'm checking your profile. I'm making sure I'm prepared and able to play things back to you today. So yeah, I think it's preparation, absolutely, but it's the type of preparation, preparing to be deliberately empathetic, because we got to win the emotional battle first, and that's why people buy from people that they like.
I love that. So, hey, tell me a little bit more about this prospecting with empathy. How do you, because I do think it's important today. And I think sometimes we focus way too much on the business side of things. And I mean, sometimes you don't do any preparation, let's be honest. And then we focus, if we do preparation, we focus more on the business side first. And we run out of time and we think about the human to human connection at the end. In your program about prospecting with empathy, is there, a key takeaway you can share with us that our audience might go, hey, I'm going to try to put that into effect?
It's let's communicate on the level of the emotional brain, not the human brain. So when I say the emotional brain, I'm referring to the limbic system, this part of your brain where your emotions come from, where fight, flight, freeze comes from. And that's the part of the brain that is subconsciously assessing you. So assessing your body language. Do I trust you? Stranger danger, all of that. So when it comes to prospecting, I need to get the customer's emotional brain feeling good about me before I ask them for anything, or before I try and position anything. I want their emotional brain to be feeling comfortable with me. So I always look at prospecting as building a relationship with a stranger who I've never met before. And when they're ready, then I will ask for their time. And so I get these prospecting reach outs being a business owner, as you probably do, Carlos, all day, every day. People say, hey, have you got this business problem? Ironically, they're mostly about getting leads, which I don't need. but have you got this business challenge? You're in this line of work. You've probably got this business challenge. And yeah, maybe I do, but you've gone straight to talking to my human brain, which is in terms of how the brain's structured, it's the frontal lobes, the prefrontal cortex. And in order for somebody to use their human brain to really think through what you're positioning in terms of, my business, do I want to meet with you? That takes effort for a human. It's much easier for the emotional brain to just read the message and go, no, it's just another copy and paste, ignore. And that's the default for everybody that we're prospecting with. So I take sellers on a journey of practicing empathy. So I've got to research very specific research template that I have sellers, even before they come near the program. They're already researching their customers. They're on Spotify. They're on YouTube. They're on LinkedIn. And they're starting to engage in some, I don't really like the term social selling, but I think it's more social engagement. I'm not selling anything, but just going from being a complete stranger with somebody and taking a bit more of a strategic approach based on empathy. So I can show Carlos I care. And so Carlos's emotional brain is feeling, okay, this guy seems okay, seems legit. Now your brain is in a situation where you might engage your human brain to go, let me just check what this is about. Is this something I'm interested in? And I may just provoke in you a thanks but no thanks, but I'm talking to an expert in prospecting, I know. So thanks but no thanks is the start, isn't it? And I think there's another phenomenal win-win here, that in taking this approach, it forces salespeople to make the time for research, but researching the other person as a human before a job role. And that's what I encourage in prospecting with empathy. And it just gets tremendous results because it's leveraging how the human brain works, not trying to short circuit how the human brain works.
I love that. That's great. All right. So, question for you. Someone told me that our emotional brain works a lot faster than our logical brain. I guess that's how someone put it to me. Is that true? I think usually we emotionally know we want to do something before we logically justify it. And I just wanted to, you've done a lot of research, Ben. What are your views?
Yeah, in psychology, it's called System 1 and System 2. And I guess most famous would be Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a great book. I encourage all listeners to go read or listen to that. And the emotional brain has to work quickly. Your emotional brain is primarily about your survival. And the emotional brain is trying to assess risk the whole time. So that's why the emotional brain has to be super, super sharp on decision making. Equally, Carlos, if I walk out onto the road here in London and I look round and I've not been paying attention and a car's going to hit me, I haven't got time to use my human brain to think through, hey, what are all my options here? My emotional brain immediately and totally makes the decision, we have a threat here. And then, without me thinking about it, it takes all of the blood flow and puts it to my extremities, probably mainly my legs and arms, to get me out the way of the car without me even thinking about it. And the mechanism that the emotional brain uses to do that and actually save our life in that scenario is, it's called the sympathetic nervous system, which is part of the autonomic nervous system. Auto because it's automatic. And so I started doing my research into how do we get involved and control the autonomic nervous system? Because once in the scenario where the car's going to hit me, probably because I've been looking at my phone, not paying attention, I get out the way of the car, I look round, the car's disappearing off into the distance. My emotional brain goes, okay, threat over, and switches my autonomic nervous system to now using my parasympathetic nervous system, which we can think of as our rest and digest state. So in the scenario where it's super helpful for my emotional brain to save my life in a scenario, unfortunately, if we get onto a Teams call with a customer and it's all gone wrong or whatever, or we're not feeling great, then our emotional brain still detects that as a threat and initiates that full body response in us, which is why it feels horrible when we're walking out on stage in front of a group of people or whatever. And so it's getting involved in that process and understanding that we can have we can predict when that's going to happen, and then get in control of that mind-body process to take back control of our autonomic nervous system, which is at risk of being hijacked, which, as we know, is just that survival mechanism. And we should probably talk about why empathy disappears as well in those situations.
I think that's excellent. Hey, Ben, this has been a great conversation. So, one thing You started out talking about this human to human connection, right, in sales. And it seems that corporate procurement processes seem to be wanting to take that more and more away. How do we, any advice on how we deal with kind of, hey, the way we want to sell, but also the way our customers want to buy? And sometimes, how do, their own processes make that more difficult?
I hear what you're saying, and I see that change going on as well, trying to get more control, digitizing things. I'd encourage salespeople to, for example, own their LinkedIn presence much, much more than they do. What do we have now on LinkedIn, Carlos? Is it 1 billion users? Even I'm seeing, just like my anecdotal evidence would be, that more and more customers are using it. Start sharing things that are of value on LinkedIn, not just your own company's kind of marketing material. That would be one way in which you can start having a presence that's more personable but still digital. And even with high volume reach out, I'm always looking at ways in which I can bring some empathy into that, some humor, some, are we bringing enough value on insight? Is this a learning experience for our customers, or are we really just reaching out to get something? And I just believe we've got to give to get, Carlos, in our game. And then even if you gave me 1,000 customers, on my account list, I'm picking my top 20 and I'm personalizing for them. And if that means me getting out of bed a little bit earlier to push some volume into that for a week, I'm going to do that, because I know the power of emotional connection versus the kind of mass volume reach out.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. It's been a hot topic, as you've probably noticed, is this whole conversation about AI and how it's taking over jobs and it does things so much better and faster. We've been talking a lot about human to human connection. What are your views on how AI is affecting that?
I think that we've got to use AI. As sales professionals, we've got to use AI tools. What's the one way to get your kind of job kind of taken removed? It's don't adopt the new technology and kind of battle against it. So I'm a GPT-4 user. I'm using a bunch of different kind of AI tools, and I'm encouraging salespeople to understand the value of AI, as well as feeling that it might be a threat. If there is a human to human connection, the whole time we have that, the whole time people still buy from people, then you're not a threat from AI. The only thing it can do for you is make you more efficient and more effective. And why would we not want to do that? So I think we should recognize that if there's value in the human to human connection, we're not going to get AI'd out of it. If there's no value in the human to human connection, so I'm not proactively bringing any learning points to you, I'm effectively doing I call them teas and biscuits meetings, where I'm not preparing for them. I'm not bringing anything new. I'm not talking about any innovation. I'm essentially just doing stuff you could read about on our company website. Be careful, because guess what? Your role in that situation means the human to human value has been substantially reduced. And that's the point at which I think in sales, a company will make the decision to automate that process from now onwards. But I like to think we've got 100% ownership and empowerment, Carlos. And as long as we're doing as much as we can to practice empathy, well, AI can't do that. AI cannot do that. Will it one day when you get artificial general intelligence? Possibly, but we're not talking about that right now, are we? We're talking about efficiency and doing stuff faster and great, leverage all of it. But the whole time you're genuinely bringing value to your customer proactively, they will still want to talk to you. The moment they don't want to talk to you and they can get a bit more of a discount by you not being there, hey, you'll be AI'd out of it, and maybe deservedly so. I'm not a guy that battles against technology. I have the same worry as everyone else does, but I'm like, no, let's leverage this. Let's use this as an opportunity to bring more value.
Excellent. Well, I could talk to you all day, Ben, but they tell me I need to keep these to a certain length. So my last question of the day, we call it acceleration insights. What might be that one piece of advice? Because And if you've had many of them, but what might be that one piece of advice, be it business or personal, that you would share with our audience that would help them be as successful as you have been?
Get interested in the mind and how judgmental we are. Our snap judgments are coming from our emotional brain. Remember, that's its job. And your emotional brain's job is to make a snap judgment to the negative. So any negative future scenarios that keep coming up in your mind, it's all natural. That's what it's there for, to keep you out of trouble. But also when things happen that you perceive as bad or negative, they're normally something that you can learn from. And I would have been more effective in my sales career if I'd adopted that mindset earlier, but I didn't know about it. And that for me would be something called mindfulness, which I used to roll my eyes at. But actually now I really understand the value of it. So, and then final point from me would be, just as with meetings, hey, no preparations, doesn't matter what strategies you've got, you're gonna have a rough time. Same with our health. If you want to be emotionally fit, you don't have to be an athlete, but you do have to look after yourself, focus on physical fitness, focus a little bit more possibly on diet and taking out some of the bad habits. And we all know what those are, right? Because without physical fitness, you're not going to have your emotional fitness. So I want everyone to be super successful, to sell, earn a ton of money, but I want them to be happy and healthy along the way. And my offer is that if anybody would like to have me come on, do a talk, I do all of that stuff totally free of charge. It's my way of giving back. So that's an offer for your listeners, Carlos.
Awesome, Ben. Really appreciate it. If our listeners do want to get in contact with you, what might be one of the best ways of doing that?
LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn, to go to Ben Drakes, you're going to find my profile there. I've got my vlog on LinkedIn. I do try and share lots and lots of stuff of value. YouTube, Ben Drakes at University on YouTube. And if you so choose, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram these days. So mainly LinkedIn and YouTube, though, Carlos, in the first instance.
Awesome. All right, folks. That does it for this episode. Ben, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. I think it was really insightful.
Pleasure. I really enjoyed it, Carlos. Thanks again for having me on.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Please check us out at b2brevexec.com or your favorite podcast platform, whether it be Spotify, iTunes, Google. And folks, that does it for our episode. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.